Hey everybody, it's Lee here, and I have a solution for a very common objection that happens all the time. In fact, I was just on a phone call talking about this very thing. The question that comes up all the time is, how do I communicate my value? Or how do I communicate the value of what I'm offering to my clients? Because they constantly say that's too expensive, I can't afford that. That's out of the ballpark. And so there's this disconnect between what the client is thinking that they're willing to spend and what you're offering. And I mean, just all the time, people will be like, how do I help communicate the value with all of these things? And so I want to spend today talking specifically about value because there's basically two things that really come up with objections. And this week we'll talk about one. Next week we'll talk about the other one. And this week we're going to be talking about value. And this is the way that I'm defining the value, and the way that you should be defining it with regard to your client meetings is, what is the maximum amount of money that someone is willing to pay to solve the perceived problem that you're proposing to solve. That's the value of the project. And if you put a price tag on your work that's higher than that, then you're going to price yourself out of the market, or price yourself out of the client's expectations. And they're going to say something like, I can't afford that. That's too much. It seems like a lot of cool stuff, but I'd love to have that, but I'm not going to pay that price. And ultimately what it comes down to, it's like, have you ever heard of the silk bed sheets problem? It's the problem is, yeah, everybody would love to have silk bed sheets, right? They would be super comfortable, really nice, awesome. But I'm not paying $5,000 to put sheets on my bed, right? That's kind of the issue. It's like, however nice it could possibly be, it's not worth the price of $5,000 for these awesome silk bed sheets. And that's an issue of value. So if you find that your clients are saying, I can't afford that, that's too expensive, even if they think it's nice, like, because that seems to be what the problem is. People will listen to you talk about what you're going to offer them, and it's this website, and it's social media management, and it's email marketing. It's like all of these individual services that you stack up, and maybe you even show them stuff from your portfolio. And like, yeah, that logo looks awesome. If I had that, I would look so professional, and it'd be great. What an awesome first experience that would be for people coming to my business to see me like that. That would be great. But then you tell them what the price is, and they're like, well, as awesome as that, I don't doubt anything about what you said. It really is awesome. I'd love to have all that great stuff. I'm just not going to spend, $5,000 on a website. That tends to be what the issue is. And so how do you overcome that? Like, how do you solve that type of a problem? And what you need to do is you need to change the problem that you're solving for your client. You don't want them to think, I'm not willing to spend $5,000 for a website, because maybe they can get it, they can get other websites cheaper, or whatever it may be. Even if there were no other websites on the earth and you were the only provider of websites, they might think to themselves, it's just not worth $5,000 or $10,000 or 20,000, whatever the price is on your project. It's just not worth it to have that. And what's happening is the client is thinking through what they feel like the perceived value of that service is. Like, what are they going to be able to get out of it? Like, it's a little bit different from the silk bed sheets problem, because you really don't get anything but comfort out of that, right? Now, if somebody said, hey, if you don't buy these particular bed sheets, then you're going to die. Like, maybe you have some kind of a medical issue of some sort, and if you lie on these fancy magical bed sheets, it'll solve your problem and you'll live. Well, then maybe, yeah, I'd spend $5,000 for that. I'd spend $100,000 for that, whatever it takes, right? But it changes the problem. I'm not just buying it because I feel like having fancy bed sheets. I'm buying it because I'm saving my life, right? It's like a bigger issue. And so that's what you need to do with regard to the way that you present projects. You don't want to say, hey, I'm going to give you all of this great stuff, and now you have a better website. Because if you do that, most people are going to they'll think two things. One thing they'll think is, do I have the money in my bank account to pay for it? Because a lot of times people will say, well, I don't have the money, I can't afford it because of that reason. But the bigger issue is, even if they don't have the money in their bank account to pay for it, sometimes they'll still do it anyway if it's something that's really valuable. Like, for example, we were just talking about the bed sheets thing. If someone said, hey, you've got to buy these bed sheets because every time you lie down, it's going to restore your body. You're going to be back to 100% health. You'll love it. It's going to be the greatest thing. These magical bed sheets, buy that for that result. And I believe that the result would be forthcoming. I'd take out a loan. Like, if I thought if I was going to die because I didn't have, my health or whatever, and, this particular set of bed sheets, albeit silk bed sheets, would solve that issue, then I would go ahead and buy all that. And of course, I'd take out a loan for it. And That's really where you want to be with your clients. You want them to say, yeah, I need to have this, even if I don't have the money in the bank account to afford it, because it's a good investment. And in order to make that happen, you have to change the nature of what you're selling to the clients. You don't want people to be thinking that you're just selling them a better website, especially if they already have a website that's not working for them. And this is where people tend to fall off the rails all the time. What they'll say, they'll say, hey, I can't find leads. And I'll say, well, what are you doing to find leads? And I'll say, well, I'm emailing people and messaging people on Facebook and all this other stuff. Nobody's even replying. And I say, well, give me an example of what you say to somebody. And they say, well, I look at their website and I say, hey, you got all these problems on your website. Hey, how about we kind of update your website and make it better, make it work for you, something like that. And of course, nobody will respond to that because they think they already have a website. It's not working for them. Why would I invest more into something that doesn't work? That's stupid. And on top of that, there's other reasons too that people don't respond. Oftentimes it's escalating the relationship far too quickly. Like there's no funnel in place of any sort. You're just saying, hey, call me on the phone, which is like, a pretty escalated relationship if it's cold traffic. So that's an issue. But the biggest issue is the perceived value of the problem that you're solving. Like they're thinking, hey, my website's trash. It doesn't do anything for me. I already invested a bunch of money into it. I'm not seeing any results from it. Why in the world would I double down and spend more money on something that doesn't work? So that is the issue. And so one of the ways that we fix that is I kind of walk you through a step-by-step process for figuring out how to tell a story behind your business. And that's one of the big components of Doublestack is fixing your marketing message. You don't want to go out there and just say, hey, I build better websites than everybody else, or I do better marketing than everybody else, and that's why you should hire me. And instead what you do is you tell a story, and it's an outcome-driven story of some sort, right? It's like, what are the results that you can deliver for people? And you have to think through a couple of things. Really, it's like three things that we think through together. First, we think through what kind of tools do you want to be using in order to drive these results, to make sure that you feel like you're comfortable with that sort of a thing. And what that means is, I'll introduce you to a bunch of tools. Like I'll show you a bunch of strategies, probably using most of the skills you already have so you can pick them up really quickly. But let's get like a dozen things under your belt that you can do that you feel really comfortable with and confident that will actually drive some kind of a tangible outcome for your clients. And then what we do is we tell a story about those services rather than showing up and listing the services individually for your clients. So rather than saying, hey, here's what I'm going to do I'm going to do social media management for you. We're going to build this great website. You're going to have this responsive design and mobile experience, blah, 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 blah. Instead of kind of going down that technical path, what you really want to do is you want to say, hey, I see your landscaping business. Here's how you can double your clientele in as little as one season, even if it's your first year in business. Something like that. That would be a tremendous outcome, right? Or, and we talk about photography a lot. It's like, hey, here's how you get this six-figure photography business that you can run out of your house with a camera. You're like, how do you do that? And start telling a story about how you can really help people. And when you do that, now you've changed the problem that you're solving. You're not just giving them a better website, you're actually building the business for your client. And so if you start telling, hey, this is what you need to do to get customers, this is how you get clients, this is how you get more calls, this is the pattern, then you've changed the value. Now, next week, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about why should I work with you instead of, the guy down the street, right? So that's a positioning problem rather than a value problem. Right now, we're talking about value. And what we want to be able to solve the issue of when your client says, I can't afford that, that's too expensive, that's more than I was thinking, I'm not going to spend that price on that service. I don't care if you're the only person in the world that does it. That's how you can tell if it's a value problem. And then next week, what we'll talk about is if somebody says, well, I like what you said, but I could get the same thing for less down the street. That's a totally different issue. We'll talk about that one later, because that will be another thing that comes up if you haven't told the story properly. And so what I'm talking about right now is the essence of the story that you tell behind your business has to be centered around solving a different problem from just let me get you a better website, because nobody's going to want to build a better website, especially if they already have one that doesn't work. They're going to think that doesn't work for me. What do you know about my business? I'm not going to do it. I'm just like the silk bed sheets. Like, as nice as those bed sheets might be, I'm just not willing to spend $5,000 on bed sheets, right? So that's the problem that people are thinking, especially in today's market where you've got, Wix and Weebly and Squarespace and, cheap designers on Fiverr and Upwork and Craigslist and like all the places in the world. that's a component that's going to keep the downward price pressure, which we're going to be talking more about that next week. But right now, even if it wasn't for any of that stuff, the mindset that your client is coming to your conversation with is probably somewhere in the vicinity of, I'm not willing to spend $5,000 on a website. Maybe I'll spend $1,000, something like that. And so it's very difficult to upsell somebody when they're thinking without changing the nature of what they think they're buying, right? So like if they're coming to your conversation thinking, I've got $1,000 to spend on a website, I would just never spend more than that on a website. That would be crazy. And then you start saying, oh, but it's a really nice website. You might be able to wiggle out a couple, maybe to $1,500 or whatever. But if you're trying to make a jump to like $5,000 or $10,000, you're not going to be able to get that kind of leverage off of just upselling a better service and kind of pushing things a little bit further. Like when you go to try to buy like a house or a car or something kind of expensive, and then like the real estate agent says, hey, what's your budget? And you say, oh, well, I've got this $500,000 budget for my house or whatever. And then they say, oh, well, let me show you some houses then. And they show you houses that are like $550, $600, something like that, or, whatever your price is. Or like if the same thing happens with cars, they're like, what kind of budget do you have for your car? And you say, oh, well, I'm looking for a $30,000 vehicle or whatever. And then they start showing you vehicles that are like 35 or whatever. It's just a little, it's pushing the envelope. It's a little bit more. It happens all the time. We just bought a bunch of furniture for the house. They're like, well, what's your budget? I was like, oh, $10,000. And they start showing us like $12,000, and they put another dresser in the mix to bump it to 15. And it's like, that's just how it works. You can bump it a little. But if I had said, we're looking for furniture, what's your budget? And I said $10,000. And they said, well, here's $100,000 worth of furniture. I'd like, get out of here. That's ridiculous. Did you hear anything I said? And so that's what you want to do with your clients. Like, you don't want to be in a situation where your client's thinking, I'm going to spend $1,000. And you're like, oh, here's a $10,000 website for you. What do you think of that? So in order to be able to make that shift, you have to change the value of the thing that you're talking about. You can't say it's a better website that's 10 times more expensive than they were thinking. You have to throw out the old idea of what they were getting and produce something new. And the way you do that is with the story that you tell about your business and why it's good to work with you, and what are the results that you can achieve if you were to be able to deploy the things that you do the best, right? Like, how do you help somebody, not what do you do for somebody? And then when you begin to tell that story, then you change the entire equation altogether, and you're not just selling a better website. What you're doing is you're selling a better business. And anybody would be willing to spend, $5,000 to ramp their business up with an extra $50,000 of revenue, right? So it's a good return on investment, and that's the idea of how you communicate value. And the way that we do that in Doublestack is we walk through exactly what the story is going to look like before you actually even present it or even start attracting clients. So one of the huge kind of upside down things that we do in Doublestack is, rather than waiting for the leads to come in and then try to scurry and try to figure out what to say to them and do a strategy session or whatever, the best thing to do is figure out, well, how do you help people before you attract the leads? And then attract the leads for the people that you can do the best stuff for. So you never get into a situation where people start asking you to do crazy stuff that you've never really even done before, even though you're confident you can figure it out, but you're probably not the best in the world. Like, what if somebody said, we got this Infusionsoft project, right? We got all of our contacts in MailChimp. We're moving them to Infusionsoft. We're trying to do this big, this big marketing thing. Can you help us with the transition? You would probably say yes, because you could probably figure it out. Even if you've never used Infusionsoft, it's not rocket science or whatever. You could probably Google it after the meeting and do a fine job. But it's not the thing that you're best at, right? You're not the one that could do it better than anyone else. And it's really uncomfortable when you're in the situation too, when people say, hey, can you do this Infusionsoft thing? And then you've got to try to, somehow exude confidence in your ability to do something you're not really all that confident in the first place. So rather than getting yourself into that kind of messy situation, wouldn't it be better if you attracted people that asked you to do all of your best stuff, like the things you already knew that you knew how to do? And of course, the biggest problem that people tend to have is an inability to effectively communicate that type of story. But when you dial that in, then you start pulling clients from a completely different pool compared to marketing individual services. Like, if people think of you as like the web mechanic, like the general web person, the jack of all trades when it comes to the internet, well, they don't really have a strong understanding of the difference between using Infusionsoft or MailChimp or using Salesforce or building a WordPress site or Shopify. Or people generally don't know anything about that. And why should they? They're hiring you to help, and that's the area that they don't really feel confident in. But rather than having them start asking you to do crazy stuff that you don't feel comfortable with, why not have clients that ask you to do all your best stuff? And so that's the point of Doublestack. So if you feel like you attract clients who either have a budget that's way too low, or you feel like clients are telling you that, I love everything you said, but it's just too expensive, I can't afford that. Like if you find that that's an issue, or you find that people are trying to hire you to do things that aren't really in your forte, I mean, we should totally fix that, because the way that you can make the most money the most consistently and help the most people is by doing the stuff that you do the best. And when you say it kind of flat on your face like that, it's kind of obvious that obviously you can charge more for the stuff that you do the best. And obviously you can help people at a higher level by doing the stuff that you do the best. That seems pretty obvious. But when it comes to marketing your business, almost nobody does it that way. And so let's get your marketing dialed in so people are getting attracted to you because of the things that you do the best. And that will enable you to drive the best outcomes. That gives you the highest value of your work. So that maximizes your earning potential. And then on top of that, you're going to find recurring revenue coming in, because in order to really drive value for a client, you don't just build something and just kind of let it roll. You kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the tools that you set up, and you stay with the client on an ongoing basis, even if it's just a couple hours a week. So that's the idea. So you get the marketing dialed in, you attract higher value clients, you have the recurring revenue component really just baked into the mix right from the beginning because of the nature of what you're offering. You're not offering a better website, you're offering a better business. In order to get the better business, it requires you to do things on an ongoing basis. So it's not an upsell. It's not an upsell to the marketing. The whole reason they're working with you is because of the whole package. So all of that is so much better. And it fundamentally changes the perception of what your client thinks they're buying. They're not buying a better website. They're buying a better business. The value is there. The recurring revenue is there. And you're helping people at a much deeper level by actually getting them what they really need. So if that sounds like something that you want to get dialed in for your business, specifically with your skills and your interest and the people you want to be working with, head over to doublestack.net/call. And let's get on the phone and talk about it. So it's doublestack.net/call. You'll see my calendar pop up, and we'll get on the phone for like 45 minutes and really dive into all of this to make sure that you've got the right story, that you're attracting the right leads, that you know how to handle the situation when your client says, ooh, that's too expensive, so that you avoid that from happening at all in the first place because of the story that you tell about how you help people, rather than trying to kind of just show them the menu of all the services that you can do. So that's what it's all about. It's a huge thing, especially right now when people really need to be emphasizing their online presence. A huge thing. I think it's a great opportunity to really be able to help people when they really need it the most. So, but in order to communicate effectively with them, you have to shift the focus off of the website and onto the outcomes, and that includes creating a really compelling story that involves the stuff you do the best. So give me a call. Head over to doublestack.net/call. Let's get this dialed in for you. And that way you've got a solid business that's going to take you through pretty much for the rest of your life. So, because I say that quite often, and sometimes people will raise their eyebrows about the whole rest of your life part because technology changes so fast. But that's the point. The point is you don't want to double down on the technology and all the individual services that you can offer, because first of all, that changes a lot. Clients tend to not understand it. And you get this value problem that we're talking about, where people just aren't willing to spend that much for what you're talking about. And that's what happens when you have a business focused on technology. What we do in Doublestack is we add the business development stack. So you've got your tech stack, you've got your business development or your marketing stack. And when you put that in place, that's where you're able to really get the results for your clients. And when you learn how to articulate that, when you learn how to reframe the way that you think about yourself and your business and how you help people, that's the kind of thing that literally will last for the rest of your life. You can take your business, reframe it with this structure, and you'll start attracting high value, long-term clients that will be happy to work with you for as long as you want them to, because you're driving results for them, because you're doing your best stuff. So head over to doublestack.net/call, and you'll see my calendar pop up. Pick a time that works for you. We'll get on the phone for like 45 minutes, and we'll talk about exactly what it takes to build a story around your business that really resolves the problem once and for all about the value of what you do. So how do you communicate the value to your customers? That's the issue that we'll solve on this call. for free. So head over to doublestack.net/call. You'll find my calendar. Let's get on the phone and talk about it. And in the meantime, stay safe and healthy. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Take care. High five for you.